Welcome to Lesson 9.7, 3D Figures. Today we're going to talk about how to identify prisms, pyramids, cones, cylinders, and spheres. Alright, first things first, we have to fill out our vocabulary. A three-dimensional shape, or a 3D figure as we call them, is a figure that does not lie in a plane and has three dimensions: length, width, and height. So this would be an example of a 3D shape. It has a length, it has width, and it has height now. Faces. Faces are the flat surfaces of a 3D figure. So any of these flat parts that you see, or I like to think of them as the basement, so the floor, the walls, and the ceiling. Those are all your faces. An edge. An edge is a segment where two faces meet. So any of your corners where two faces meet is an edge. A vertex is a point where three or more edges meet. So we talked about vertex when we talked about angles, but in an angle there's only two rays that meet, and in this one there are three edges that meet. So any of your corners are going to be your vertices. If you need to, make sure to pause so you get everything written down and all your examples drawn. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to identify the number of faces, edges, and vertices in a shape. So the first thing we look at is the shape, and we know that we always have to have two bases when we're talking about prisms. So we have a base right here. So if there's a base on bottom, then there has to be a base on top. And since this shape has four sides, each of the four sides has to have a face coming off of it, which means that there are four faces around the middle, one on bottom, one on top, which means that I have 6 faces. The edges. Here's a neat little trick for edges. If your shape has, so this one has 4 sides, so that's 4 edges. You know that if there's 4 edges down here, there has to be 4 edges up here. Now each of these corners also has to have an edge connected to it. So when you're working with a prism, if there's 4 here, then there has to be 4 in the middle and 4 on top. So it's always, however many you have on bottom, has to be the same in the middle and the same on top for prisms. So in this case, we have 12 edges. And then your vertices. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 on bottom. There's not going to be any in the middle. And because this is a prism, there's going to be the same amount on top. So if I have 4 down here, I have to have 1, 2, 3, 4 up here, which tells me that I have 8 vertices. Now this shape is a little bit difficult. I know it looks like a pyramid, but it is not a pyramid. It's actually a triangular prism. So what this means is it actually looks something like this. So it doesn't come to a point at the top, it actually has an edge to walk on. It's kind of like the roof of a house. So you have the roof and then you have the peak. So in this case, we have this rectangular bottom, which is one face. We have one over here and one over here. So we have 3 all the way around, just like we have the 3 sides of the triangle. And then we have a triangle up front, and you know we have to have a triangle in back. So that tells me that I have 3, 4, 5 faces. I know this is tough when you can't see the 3D figure itself, but you have to try and use your imagination, or if you need to, try and draw it out. Edges. So if I have 3 edges here, I know that I have to have 3 edges in back. And then I know that I have to have 3 in the middle. Just like over here, it was 4 on bottom, 4 in the middle, 4 on top. Same thing, 3 on top, 3 in the middle, 3 in the back. So that tells me that I have 9 edges. For vertices, I have 1, 2, 3. So since I have 3 on top, I know I have to have 3 in back, which means I have 6 vertices. Right, so in your notes you have these two shapes. What I want you to do, I want you to figure out how many faces, edges, and vertices each of them has. Okay. And I want you to post that on Edmodo. So this is your first part to post on Edmodo. So this is number 1 and number 2. And then we're going to go back right now and we're going to talk about prisms, pyramids, cones, cylinders, and spheres. First things first, a prism. A prism is a 3D figure with 2 parallel and congruent bases. All of the faces are polygons. This is in your vocabulary, so make sure you open that up. Okay, so each of these is a prism. It has a base, and now the base that you're looking for typically is the shape that you only see twice. So if you look here, we have a hexagon, and we only see the hexagon on top and on bottom. With our triangular prism, we have a triangle here and a triangle in back. And with our square prism, we have a square here and a square on bottom. All the rest of the faces will be some type of rectangle or square. If it is not a polygon, it is not a prism. And if it doesn't have 2 bases, it is also not a prism. If it is a shape that has only 1 base, it's what we call a pyramid. A pyramid is a 3D figure with 1 polygon base and all the other faces are triangles. This is a fairly familiar shape for us. The only difference is we have to know how to name these. So in this case, the bottom is a rectangle, so this would be a rectangular pyramid. Now this one has a base of a triangle, so this one would be a triangular pyramid. You'll notice that at the top there isn't a base, it comes to a point. That's what makes a pyramid a pyramid. The difference between that and a prism is the fact that a prism has a base here and a base on bottom. Again, you name the prism based on its bases. So the base of this shape is a hexagon, so this is a hexagonal prism. You'll want to write this down in your notes. This would be a triangular prism, and this would be a square prism. Now, the reason that this shape right here is not a cube is because these faces on the sides are not congruent to the top and bottom bases. A cube is a figure that has all congruent faces. So just like a square has all congruent sides, a cube has to have all congruent faces. And we know that cubes typically look like this. The most common thing that we think of when we talk about cubes are number cubes or dice. Again, all of these faces are the same size, they're congruent, and that's what makes it a cube. Okay, next we have a cylinder. A cylinder is a 3D figure with 2 parallel and congruent bases that are circles. This is where they differ from prisms. The bases of prisms are polygons, but the bases of cylinders are circles. You'll notice that the middle part of the cylinder is curved. It has no line segments and therefore has no faces because it's not a polygon. So you have the circular base on top and the circular base on bottom. It has no faces because it has no polygons. Then we have a cone. A cone is a 3D figure with 1 circular base and 1 vertex. So it's the circle version of a pyramid. It comes to a point at the top, but its base is a circle. Since it's not a polygon, it has no faces. and there is no difference in the name. These are always cones. Okay, so what I want you to do, you have 4 problems listed in your notes. You need to name each shape, so shape number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And you need to post on Edmodo the names of each shape, and you also need to post, and we can change this, we can make this number 5 and number 6. So make sure tonight that you post the names of each shape and the number of faces, edges, and vertices for each of these shapes. As always, if you have any questions, make sure to write them down or to post them so we can talk about them in class tomorrow.